Hey, welcome back everyone to Veteran Nation here on NRN Plus. And before we get started with our interview today, I want all of you to go to www.nrnplus.com/VN. That's all spelled out, www.nrnplus.com/VN. That's our landing page. You can subscribe to the show. It's $9.95 a month or $79.95 for the year. And you're not just going to get access to this show, you're going to get access to all the great content that NRN provides. You're going to get access to independent minded journalists and entertainers. So go ahead and do that. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And with today's interview, we have Jessica Quezada, who's from LiboRisk, and this is a nonprofit that she started. And for all you veterans and military members out here, you want to pay attention to today's show. Jessica, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. I'm excited to be here today. It's a beautiful Friday morning, so I'm excited to chat with you and get to talk about LiboRisk and more.
Yeah. I came across your group, and it's really a good group for people who I think are in the military, who want to take the best advantage of the opportunities that are available, but also for veterans who are transitioning, getting out, and kind of don't maybe not know what they want to do. This gives them a chance to travel around and kind of figure some things out. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, the initial concept of this is traveling is my passion. It's something that I've adored since I was a child, and my grandmother told me about all of her adventures, and she would go everywhere in the world, and I just always aspired to kind of follow her footsteps. And I did so in the military, but if you served, you know how much of a pain in the butt it is. There's so many, obstacles that deter you from wanting to actually buy that plane ticket. And it's out of safety and precaution just because of the military and whatnot. But at the same time, I feel like there's not enough resources to really encourage troops to go take the action to actually do that, or they're not getting the help they need from their command. And so I went through it, and every single time it was a pain in the butt, but I made sure I did because it was such an important aspect of my life, going around and traveling. And every time I felt like people would just be like, dumbfounded in how I'd go on these amazing trips to Thailand, Malaysia, Colombia, Spain, Portugal, all these different places. And they were curious about how I was doing it so often while serving active duty in the military. Um, so I kind of was thinking of a way that would ultimately foster a community that educated and inspired troops to get out there and to get past those prerequisites and really just take the steps into discovering what this life has to offer outside the compounds of a base and the fabric of a uniform. And it's the same thing for particularly veterans who identify so much with the uniform that when they get out, they may or may not feel a little lost. And I feel like travel is a very medicinal thing of life that we should be tapping more into. And for veterans, that can be a lifesaver for those who've gone through traumatic or difficult times, or just don't feel like they're really a part of a community anymore. And so this is a way for them to stay connected with that community, for them to travel and go see the world and be around other people who put on a uniform as well. So that was kind of my initial thought, is just like something that I absolutely love and I'm questioning about all the time. How do I bring this into something that everybody can take part in?
You touched on a lot of great things there, and we both were Marines. I did a lot of traveling while I was active duty, and one thing that the military really gives us the opportunity, both CONUS and OCONUS, is to experience other cultures. Another saying that we had in the Marines was get comfortable being uncomfortable, and I know when I was sent overseas a couple times, it was, I was definitely in uncomfortable situations, but you learn to, okay, I can adapt to this situation and I can go, and the things that you learn and start to experience, I think really give people a better sense of self and appreciation for when they do come back home. Now you traveled to a lot of really great places there that I haven't been. What would you say has been the most rewarding experience?
I would have to say Colombia, and there's several reasons that that was such a developmental experience. Was because one, it was my longest trip. I spent about a month out there, and when I don't take leave often, but when I take leave, I take a out there, and it was a very like sketchy location. A lot of people had a lot of stigmas just because the history of Colombia is not very safe. It doesn't seem very productive. There's a lot of risque things or taboo aspects of the culture apparently, that I found very untrue. So one, it was kind of battling the perspective of my command and my other peers on like my intent of going there. Like Colombia is just known for cocaine and hookers. And it's like, no, that's not all they're known about. And being able to go there and submerge myself in a culture that has such a stigma. I mean, it's one of my favorite countries. And it really changed my mind about what a country can bring to the table despite, violent times or historically violent points in that culture. And two, I spent a long time out there. I feel like solo travel is such an important thing to do for anybody because you really get to figure yourself out. You really get to ask yourself the dirty questions of like, what do you like to do? What do you actually enjoy doing? Not just because there's people around or your friends are influencing you or your partner has a say in what you're going to do, but what do you really like to do? And so if I wanted to get up on a plane the next morning and go to another city, I could. If I wanted to stay up until midnight, I could. If I want to get up at 3 a.m. and go for a walk, I could. There's a lot of aspects of self dependency that you get to tap into when you go by yourself. So I've traveled alone, but I hadn't traveled alone for that long. And at one point, I was getting a little bit anxious about the period of time that I was out there. And then I finally went to my last city, and it was just this beautiful coffee region, and it was so energizing to be in such a natural, wonder of the world. And I'll have to say, like, I was going through a really difficult period in my career. I had been like, this rock star the entire period of my career, and then right beforehand, I had suffered from alcoholism, a hard time in my life where I actually failed for the first time. Like I
Mhm.
got a DUI, and a lot of Marines particularly suffer from this, and that was the first time I truly failed. So Colombia was like this destination that I had in my mind that after overcoming my DUI, my NJP, those things, I could really say if I could pick a destination that described who I am in a time and a place and, who I was as that person, it would be Colombia. It's a little risky, it's a little challenging, it's a little, taboo, but at the same time, it's beautiful and it's there and it's just going to be a surprising revelation to who you are as a person. So I think that was probably one of the coolest destinations I had been to.
No, that's great. Colombia is, I've never been there. It's definitely on my list of places
You
I
have
want to
to
check out.
go. It's going to be the next Thailand. I'm telling you, it's amazing.
Well, especially now that their civil war is over, the longest civil war
Yeah.
ever in history, and yeah, finally over for the last, I think, 4 years. It's been finished, but yeah, definitely an interesting culture and a lot of history. So I really look forward to when I can take an opportunity to get there. Um, as an American traveling, is there anything that you found dealing with foreigners that shocked you?
That shocked me.
Yeah.
Um, I would have to say how nice people are. I feel like Americans are incredibly pessimistic. And I get this all the time from people who are just like, oh, you got to be careful because you're a woman. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like everybody else in the world travels, they're cultured. It's the Americans are the only ones that are just nervous all the time. And I feel like I definitely give off like an aura and or an energy that is not very meek. So when I do travel, I don't necessarily attract like a a difficult crowd or difficult
Hmm.
people. But I also think it's just my aspect of optimism. I don't assume that everybody else in the world is so bad. We see negative aspects all the time on the news, on the radio, in social media, but people are inherently good. And I will always be a diehard optimist. So
Hmm.
traveling as an American, that's one of the biggest things is finding out that, people are a lot nicer than we expect. And that everybody else is curious about American culture. Everybody knows Rihanna, everybody knows Trump, everybody knows our music, everybody knows our culture, everybody knows more about us in politics and American culture than Americans do. So I thought that was probably the most humorous aspect of things. People ask about my culture and my politics all the time, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't watch that stuff. So
That's very similar to what I discovered.
Yeah.
With traveling, I would just ask people, and I would get people who would ask me, your accent, because a lot of the countries I went to had a lot of South African, British, English speakers. So they'd ask immediately where my accent was, and I said, I'm American. And I would ask them, "What's your take on Americans?" And they're like, "You guys are very loud, but you're also really polite, so we're okay with that." And I think that's one thing that kind of shocked me, was that for years there's been this prevalent thing that everyone thinks that Americans are hated overseas, but actually my experience was it was quite easy to get along with people, especially when they learn, when we became much more friendly and would talk, you see eye to eye with a lot of things. We're really not that different.
No, for sure, and that's the thing I love about traveling is, like, you get to connect with people in ways, and I almost feel like I kinda take off my skin in a way of shedding, any nervousness that I have when I travel, because 'cause I'm just like, "I'm gonna talk to everybody. I'm gonna get in in-depth conversations because I never know when I'm gonna meet these people again." And you really cross some boundaries when you kinda have that open heart and perspective, because you really never know if you're gonna meet them again. So, you realize you're right that humans, we are similar than we would like to think. Doesn't matter if you're crossing the pond or the country or the bridge, you're always gonna connect with somebody.
There's a lot of truth in that. I lived in the Middle East for over a year, and I decided to take a trip. I went to Moscow,
Oh,
simply
cool.
because it was cheap and it was a place that I've always wanted to see. And I went and spent several days there. Uh, for those who are history buffs like I am, highly recommend it, because Moscow was never successfully invaded, so they have everything. Like, you want to see Ivan the Terrible's crown, it's there and you can see it. Uh, but yeah, I just wasn't sure how I'd be accepted as an American, and I found people really wanted to get to know me as soon as they found out I was an American. So it was a positive experience. So uh, you definitely can't go off of prejudices of how you think you're going to be viewed. You just have to kind of get out there and just start meeting and talking with people. Um,
Yeah.
is there any trip or any tricks you would recommend to people who are going to be doing any type of travel, be it within the country or internationally?
I definitely believe planning is such an important aspect of enjoying a vacation. And I'm a very impromptu, compulsive person. So if somebody's like, let's buy a ticket and go now, I will probably do it. If they want to go on a road trip, I'll probably do it. But I like the planning aspect because I've gone on a trip before. This was my first solo trip actually to Spain, and I was out there meeting a friend, and I had nothing planned. I didn't know anything of what I was doing. I was hoping she would kind of arrange things, and she didn't. And unfortunately, like, I really did not enjoy that trip whatsoever because I hadn't taken the time to research what, is around there, what I should see.
Mhm.
So my biggest tip for anybody who wants to enjoy traveling is plan. I always kind of Google the nation's coolest things to do, things that I'm interested. I love art, I love museums, I love jungle trekking, I love hikes, I love activities, I love partying, I love everything. So I'll Google all that stuff and then I'll map out all those things in their cities and figure out, okay, this is a cluster of stuff that I like to do. I'm definitely going to visit this city. Here's a cluster of things that I like to do. I'm definitely going to visit this city. And there's only like one thing here. So probably shouldn't, like, how am I going to arrange it a day based on one activity? So when you do that, it really helps you prioritize and organize a lot of the things that you want to do. And if you neglect to do that, you just arrive to a country and you're like, it's a lot of work because you got to figure out some places you can't get to. I was in Borneo and we had just gotten there right before the airport was built. So people were taking boats, day boats to get to the jungle trap we were going to do. So it's like proper planning, and I feel like in the military, we do that so often that this is one aspect of life that you really should include your militaristic, season skills is to be able to properly plan and execute a trip so you can enjoy it. So,
No, that's I would 100% agree with you. Um, I worked at an embassy for a short time.
Mhm.
One trick I will give to people out there is at every embassy, there is a contingent of Marines there. Uh,
Yeah.
and what I would do if I were you and you're thinking of planning a trip and it's to where there's an embassy or I forget the other term for the offsite, but contact the Marines and ask them what they, what are things that they do. Because I have found with military travel people, there's things that we don't know. And I had a friend of mine who he actually went to Petra and was
Mhm.
like, oh, you have to go to this hotel and talk with this guy because he's going to take care of you and here's what he's going to do. And like really gave some very good tips and tricks of if that's where you're going to go, here's where you're going to have the best experience. For me, in terms of doing things, I kind of stumbled upon photography late in life. So I like to just make sure I set some time in just to walk around town with my camera, and I find that to be enjoyable. And then I've got, all these great photos that I've saved over the years. Um, Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your living situation because I think it's really cool and really unique.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my bus right now, as you can kind of tell. It's just the shelving up here. I'm on my big old high. I built the bed fairly high, but yeah, when I got out of the Marine Corps, right before I got out, I bought a short school bus. It's a 5 window, 23-foot school bus, and I'm converting it into a tiny home right now and plan on traveling the United States to host events and gather service members around local installations. I'll kind of the installations themselves, and that's where I'll base my destinations on to travel this thing in.
I think that's so cool. I did something similar for about 2 years. I thought it was a really good way to kind of clear out the clutter in my
Yeah.
life of just things that you accumulate, and then it really kind of forced me to say, "Do I need this?" And I found getting rid of so much stuff was just liberating. Um, so I don't know if you've had that experience. Um, can you talk about some of the challenges that, because I know there's going to be a lot of military people who watch this who are thinking about downsizing. Uh, can you talk about some of the challenges?
Um, there's been several, and one was, you know, the biggest aspect of buying something so much larger compared to a camper van or something is the registration process is a little bit different, and especially because if you're not buying something that's already converted or has like plumbing, electrical, a bathroom, whatever it may be, you got to figure that all out. And there's,
Mhm.
there's ways about it. I'm actually registering in Vermont, and it's totally legal to do so. You don't have to be a resident of Vermont to register a vehicle there. So you don't have to show proof of conversion that this has certain criteria to meet motorhome standards.
Okay.
So that's kind of a way for you to work about and live and actually drive your vehicle while not having it necessarily completed. The goal is to have it completed, but that takes time. Um, Also the aspect, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm not a handyman. I never learned how to use power tools. I never learned how to use a circular saw, jigsaw, anything like that. So being able to learn those little things and get handy and learn how to make mistakes and learn that you have to fasten wood in more than one place or it'll warp. It's just things that I had no idea. I've never laid floor before. I've never done any of this stuff. But YouTube is an amazing resource. So I've kind of taken that and I've learned quite a bit. And then also the aspect of like figuring out how comfortable you are, right? Because you had mentioned a very cleansing aspect of like living the nomadic life, and it is. You really get to inventory your life. You get to inventory your things, and you ultimately get to inventory people and experiences and priorities and stuff, right? So the part of the inventory process is sizing down and figuring out, okay, what do you want to have in your life? What do you not want to have in your life? I'm a Marine, so I'm very comfortable with not having a lot. If I don't have a shower or a toilet in here, I'll figure it out. Some people are a little bit bougier and they want that stuff, and that's okay. Um, I do plan to build in like a compost toilet and an exterior shower and stuff, but it's not like a necessity of mine. So really having to figure out, okay, what do you want? What are you okay with not having? who are you not? That's the first question that I think you really should ask before even buying your bus, because a lot of people may like the idea of, this lifestyle, because I feel like it's become a very Instagrammable thing, which I'm not very keen on, but it is. And people will buy a bus or a camper van and then they realize they are not a nomad whatsoever. So those are kind of the things that I've crossed boundaries with, and that I'm coming to terms with and really figuring out.
No, a lot of your experience is things I experienced, especially
Yeah.
being a handyman. Because while it's very freeing, there's some things that you're like, wow, I'm never gonna have to really deal with that again. There are things that I had to deal with, like plumbing issues, um, that I was like, okay. And like you said, YouTube is a godsend. There's almost everything up there. YouTube and eHow, I
Yeah.
found were like my best resources for things. And I was like, okay, how do I figure this one out? And you just type it in, spend the time watching it. It's like, okay, well, almost none of this stuff is incredibly hard. Very few things do you need a specialist for. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there were things that, and it, I was also amazed at it changes in the different areas that you go to, because, in
Oh
one part of
yeah.
the country, you don't have to worry about, rats getting up and eating your wiring. In other parts, you do. So there are things that you have to do, take care of that stuff. I really appreciate, because I did not know that about registering in Vermont. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really great tip for someone who's looking to do something like this. Um, is there any places that you've been able to travel to with your bus that you think was just amazing and you'd highly recommend?
So I'm still waiting on the registration to come back. There are
Okay.
some issues with me trying to get it, so I'm still waiting to travel and get this baby out there. But when I do, I at least have it to a point that it's going to be fairly converted, and like I can comfortably just travel and enjoy it. So I definitely want to be traveling against the West Coast. I want to be going to like Big Sur and places like that are just absolutely gorgeous, and hit Yosemite, one of my
Mhm.
favorite spots that I've ever been to. So I'm gonna stay on the West Coast for the most part, and then next year is when I'm really going to be hitting some random spots and going all throughout. And one of the coolest things too, I've gotten to connect with so many military outdoor organizations
Mhm.
who cater to providing events and programs for service members and wounded vets and whatever not, criterion they have. They are located everywhere. One gentleman I met, he's Veterans Adventure Group, and he's up in Big Bend, Oregon right now, and we
Okay.
got to chat and really just like talk about our experiences. So that's a connection now that I've made, that I can go up and meet him and go on his tours and stuff. So I definitely plan on taking this baby everywhere.
And, as veterans, there's a lot of things available to us.
Yes.
Uh, I'm a California resident. Here in California, if you're a veteran, you get, or if you're a disabled veteran, you get access to all the state parks. As a veteran, you get discounts at all of the national parks. So, being able to travel and camp, it becomes very easy out of this part of the country. Um, there is, I think, resources out there that not everybody knows about. It still amazes me, because I talk with active duty military every single day, and the amount of active duty military who've been in for a long time. I'm talking senior staff and COs and officers who don't know about like something like
Yeah.
space available flights. Just amazes me. And it's like, these are benefits that are available to us. And I think that I should have done more research before our interview. I think they now are allowing 100% veteran space available flights as well. I don't quote me on that. I know it was something they were trying to get to. Um,
Yeah.
Now with your foundation, LiboRisk, uh, how can someone join? What can they expect, with your group?
So the biggest aspect, the biggest difficulty that I had with that, I'll just say this first, is monetizing LiboRest. That wasn't a priority of mine. I never cared to, and I still don't care to, but it's a bad business practice, I suppose. So I was looking at ways that I could ultimately build something that would enable to me actually grow with this business. And right now, I'm focusing on building the community. If you look at any great, company or brand, it's community based, people
Mhm.
buy because they love Apple. They love what it means to be a part of the Apple community. And same thing about Nike, same thing about Adidas, and just, other really flourishing companies. And so if I can build a community, and even if I step away from it and I never touch it again, that'll be the most beautiful thing that I ever touched, that I ever fostered. But right now, service members, past and present, who are active reserves and veterans, they can come join the Facebook community. They can share their ideas, their experiences, ask any questions we have. It's a super active community, and I see people posting and sharing and asking questions all the time on there. So that's a really like self-fed ecosystem of service members who are just traveling and doing their thing. The Instagram I use as a platform to really share the travel stories of those who serve. So this is where you get to see the visuals and really get inspired by people and what they're doing. Yesterday, I just shared a gentleman, he was a Marine, and he was talking about his experience in Oktoberfest. And service members love to drink, so I think it's like a healthy cultural way to like kind of tackle something that we all enjoy. While not highlighting necessarily the alcoholic part so much, but more so about the culture, right? You get to go to this beautiful country and really understand like and learn about their culture too. So it's cool to meet and connect with service members in that platform and be able to share those travel stories. And I kind of share and throw in some other videos and inspirational stuff in there as well, just to get people like stimulated. People have grown up in small towns and joined the military who have never seen the beach before, who have never seen a full city before, much less a cultured, crazy, wild, beautiful place somewhere else in the world. So for them to jump on Instagram and see something and be wowed by it, it's completely awe-inspiring. That's what I really want people to go into that feed and just leave completely excited about what this world has to offer. So that's kind of that aspect. And then right now, more so, I've been working on the website. And the website, it's cool that you kind of mentioned this, was like before, a lot of service members, when we travel, like if you get a travel agent or something like that, they don't necessarily know what we need to go do to travel. A travel agent isn't going to care about that. So with this website, I've really incorporated a lot of aspects of like the prerequisites, things you should be aware of, where you shouldn't go, where you should go. It's great that you mentioned the embassies, and like that's another avenue for me to connect with, is really talk to those Marines, those MSGs, the Marine security guards, and see like, hey, what advice do you guys have? Because there's a lot of things as troops that, I wouldn't recommend certain cities of Colombia to go to. You should not go there because you will get in big trouble, and people, any other travel agency or travel community is not going to care about that. So I know as a service member, prior service member, you need to be safe. You need to understand that there's some red zones there. So that's where I've kind of filtered out some of the information for the website. And then I also have my travel blogs as well for some of the places that I've been. I'll be featuring, stores or items, travel items that I absolutely love. Some travel agencies that I actually think are really ethical and amazing. So it's kind of a very informational hub for troops to get and extract a bit of everything. And one of the recent things that I included was a list of all of the military outdoor organizations. So this will be a great, central hub for troops to get every bit of information, the top travel apps, top travel websites, top military outdoor organizations that they can apply for and go to. So it's a lot, but it's something that's been neglected and is super needed right now in this time and period when we have so much on the internet to look for.
One thing I discovered out here, and I actually talked to someone I know who works for the Marine Corps Community Services, MCCS, was the amount of retirees who, military retirees who bought a mobile home or something like what you have, and they travel and go base to base. And like I talked to one couple, they were like, oh yeah, we've hit all these bases here on the West Coast, and next year we're going to go to the East Coast and do all the same thing. I met one guy in the Army who bought a houseboat, and his plan was to go around Florida all the way up through New York, through Niagara Falls, come back through Chicago, down the Mississippi, and just make that loop. So I mean, there's some really cool travel that people are doing out there that I think your organization would be fantastic to help link some of these people up and just give people ideas so they know, hey, this is the type of thing I want to do, because there's some cool stuff out there. You mentioned the website, you mentioned the Instagram. If I could, can I have you plug everything that you have out there so people can find you and reach out and ask questions, do whatever they want?
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can find us on Facebook groups. It's just LiboRisk and join there. And then on the Instagram it is LiboRisk as well. And then the website is going to be libotachrisk.com. So that is where you can find all the juicy, risky stuff.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining us today. I really enjoyed talking with you. Definitely keep in touch with us. If you go anywhere cool, get back in contact. I'll have you on the show and we can broadcast it out to everybody, because I think this is, especially for people who are struggling with PTSD, substance abuse issues. I think this can really show them that there's a good way to change your life out there.
Yeah. And like I've said before, like travel is medicinal and we haven't tapped into it like the resource it should be in the military. And there's a lot to do with, like you said, service members who are struggling, with certain aspects in their life, that if they were outdoors, if they just got out more and were able to connect with, humanity a little bit more deeply, I think it would really address some of the issues that our troops go through. So it's not just about the Instagram photos. I'm going to say that right now. It's not just about the Instagram photos. It's not about the selfies.
Absolutely.
It's not about any of that. It's about elevating your perspective of humanity and knowing what is essentially out there and helping you grow as a person, not just in the uniform, but more so outside of the uniform. So I'm really excited, and thank you again for having me on this podcast to talk more about that, because it's my passion. This is my baby. So I'm excited to see how much we get to grow our community.
Well, I definitely, I'm so thankful that you came on. I think this is definitely going to help people. So thank you again, and keep in touch with us. Love to have you back on the show again.
Thank you.
Uh, so as we wrap up today, again, I'm going to talk to all of our viewers and just remind you that if you go to www.nrnplus.com/VN, you can subscribe to our show, get access to all the extra content that we do, and you'll get access to all the other NRN shows that are on here. They're all great. There's a lot of really cool people doing stuff. We are really enjoying our Military Mondays with both myself and James Dunn. So we're trying to do a lot more with veterans and military. Reach out to us. I've got the Veteran Nation group on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter at Vet Nation NRN. So definitely reach out to me, reach out to us. We just want to do good things for military and veterans out there. And for everybody, thank you for being worth serving.